everybody? It's the DNVR Rapids podcast, and I get to be your host today because we got Mitch in the dungeon.
He's in the dungeon.
We have Bat Mitch out there in the cave, but here in studio, I got the bodacious, the illustrious Duane Brown.
Wow, illustrious.
I'm learning new words. I got a thesaurus last year
I'm
for
gonna add
Christmas.
that to my resume.
I got that last year for Christmas, and I'm barely starting to use it.
Words?
No, thesaurus.
Words for Christmas.
Today we're going to be talking about, guess what? Chris Armas, once again, the new head coach of the Colorado Rapids. And here for this first segment, we're going to have Mitch talking about playoff expectations and what he expects from Chris Armas in his first year. And we're going to let him cook a little bit. Because last night he made this amazing, what was it? Sweet potato pie that killed. So I thought, why not give him 20 minutes to cook something else up, but this time about Chris Armas. Give us a little potato pie.
We can go back and forth on this. It doesn't have to be me for 20 minutes.
No, we want to let you cook because you got the takes, man. I think you have some amazing takes on this. I've heard a little bit of
somebody just dropped a thumbs down.
That's fine, man. Dislike me. Don't dislike the pod though. I'm gonna let Mitch. Up. So I really do want to get Mitch's thoughts on Chris Armas and what he expects in the first year from the head coach. Like when you look at Chris Armas with the hire, everything that's been said about him, what's the thing that you're like, okay, this is what should happen, but this is what I expect to happen?
Right. I mean, it's really tough. You know, we have to put an asterisk on all of this because there's a bunch of roster spots open, you know, a bunch of position groups in flex where we don't really know what to fully expect on the field in terms of the attacking group, the midfield group. There's still some slots that we got to fill out, the wings specifically. Do we bring in another striker? So with all of that as a caveat in terms of what to expect for on-field performance, I think the bare minimum is a playoff appearance in terms of what you should expect, right? As we've said on here, this kind of feels like Porig putting his all of his cards in here on Armas as the coach. And, you know, you do that and it better be playoffs, especially when 2/3 of the league makes the playoffs, right? It's harder to miss the playoffs in this league than it is to make it.
And the Rapids found a way to miss them.
And yet here we are after 2 years of not making the playoffs. No, look, I think you need, you know, is the play-in or whatever, is that enough? Probably not. I think you need to avoid, like, either win through the play-in if that's where you land, or be in the outright playoffs waiting for the play-in to be done. I think that's bare minimum expectations based on kind of a bizarre hire.
So you're saying playoff spot? Are you talking about just a play-in? Even if it's just a play-in spot, are you?
You have to win. That? If the play-in is where you land at the end of the season, you have to win. Like you have to make it into the playoffs,
into the actual playoffs.
Yeah.
So now that you see Chris Armas, you've seen all the reactions around the internet. It's been a week. You kind of had time to let it digest and kind of go through you a little bit like Thanksgiving dinner. What do you actually think is going to happen with this hire? With all those caveats that you said at the beginning, you expect if it's a successful year if they make the playoffs. But what do you actually think is going to happen? Do you think they make that playoff spot, or do you think it's going to be a little bit more like this hire looked bad from the beginning?
No, I do. I think a playoff spot's realistic. Again, you only have to be 10th, right? Like that's it. You just have to be 10th. Like 40 points can get you a playoff spot. 41 points can get you a playoff spot. I think that isn't insane. I mean, look, maybe that is optimistic, right? Like maybe that is putting on Rapids colored glasses and hoping that it's a playoff game, but the vibes were so low post RSL loss, right? Just like so in the basement, couldn't be worse. And, you know, the 2 months after that were definitely better, right? Like the Little era was so much better. You cleared out a lot of roster slots and cap space, and, you know, you have plenty of money to spend. You kind of have a blank slate. Like really, you can go so many different directions, right? So I think expecting a play-in should be the bare minimum. I mean, I think that's like with the opportunity to build basically a new game day roster. I mean, and especially because you have the guys from R2 that you can start, maybe Hanya gets a first team. Maybe we see, more of Ollie, maybe Remy's playing on the wing. You have productive guys in the wings. You have room on the roster to spend money. I mean, you probably have over $2 million between the guys who went out, right? Like between Price, Rubio, Lewis, Acosta. I mean, you have tons of money you can spend. So are they going to do that well? Not going to predict. I'm not going to predict 5 all-stars in with that money, but I do think that at bare minimum, you're going to see a more cohesive roster. You're going to see better chemistry. You're going to see better vibes because last year was a disaster, and it's only up. Like, it's literally only up from there.
You have no other choice, right? You're the last in the West. You should be able to climb some spots, even if it's just one. You brought up Chris Little, and I find that really interesting. And me and Duane were talking about this a little bit. Do you think the coaching dynamic with Chris Little taking over last year for the last couple of months, and then bringing in a new head coach and having him be assistant again, do you think that there's going to be a weird dynamic between them? Do you think I trust Chris Little's a really good guy? He's going to try to go in there and try to do his best to follow the leader, which is Chris Armas. But what do you expect from the locker room? You're a little bit closer to them. You talk to Chris Little a lot more. You talk to a lot of those guys. What do you look at?
Look, Chris Little, I mean, I've said it on here a bunch, and I'll continue to say it. I mean, he's a good coach. He's a good guy. I think he's unique in his. He's very quiet, direct, honest. He's unlike really any coach I've ever been around in sports, and I've covered a lot of different sports in a lot of different areas and levels of amateur, high school, college, pros. He's a 101. He is. I think he's going to be fine in his assistant role. It's something he's not unfamiliar with. He is. He really helped turn around the vibes. I mean, I keep going back to the vibes. They were so bad. Like, I can't tell you. Like, walking into practice, across from the stadium after the practice field was like. It was so sad. Like, you could just see it. You could just see the season weighing on guys, and no one was having a good time. And he turned that around. And I think having that voice and having that presence and that communication with players in the locker room is going to go a long way. I think it's really important that they kept him, really. And let's go worst case with Armas. You have Little in the wings. Like, you have him ready. Like, if it goes bad, see you later. We're going with Chris Little, right? Like, that is a nice security blanket to have based on what could be Toronto 2.0. I don't think it's going to be, but I do. I'm not going to rule it out as a possibility.
That brings up a really interesting point as well. You're just giving me a lot of nuggets right now, man, that we've talked about, but we really haven't talked about. Mm-hmm. Do you think this front office and the ownership is willing to fire another head coach so early into the year or the season, or do you think they're going to let it ride, whether it's a good season or a bad season?
Yeah, I guess saying Toronto 2.0 isn't exactly correct because he's going to have a runway, right? Like, you can't go, I mean, Robin was here for a while, but then, Little for 2 months with an international break in it. And then you hire this coach, it would have to be worse than last year to fire him before the All-Star game, would be my guess.
What about firing him at the end of the year? Is it missing a playoff spot fireable offense, or finishing last in the West a fireable offense?
I think there's layers to that, as in, like, is your top goal scorer injured all season? Is your captain injured all season? What's the did Navarro come through? Right? Because, like, a lot of this is going to depend on some key moves like Navarro stepping up and being worthy of a purchase option, or, Sidney Tavares stepping in post illness and injury from last year and making it worth picking up his option. Effective spending in the offseason, right? Like, if we look at who Porg brings in and it's like, wow, these guys are awesome, right? Like, he goes and gets some true, like, MLS quality starter guys and they're not performing well, then he probably doesn't survive the season. If it's injury riddled, if it's stuff beyond Armas's control, you probably will see him on a short, and it's bad, like it's non-playoffs. You'll probably see him on a short leash going into 2025.
Do you have any questions for Mitch, Duane?
I'm just listening to the man cook up the Armas takes.
You mean
Look,
Mitch?
it's so hard to know, and I talked
Well,
about
the
this
takes
with
on
Brendan Plone and Mitch over at the Shirtless Plantain show over the weekend. It's so hard to know specifically what he's looking for. Like, we kind of know what Porig wants on the roster, right? But he inherited that Red Bull roster from Jesse Marsh. 2020 was so weird that you can't really say that, you know, after one full season going into 2020, he was really able to like make the roster he wanted, right? You don't even get a second window in Toronto, right? And so we haven't totally seen tactically how he wants to build out a squad. You know, we don't know what maybe R2 pieces he wants to bring up. We don't know, you know, internally what pieces he wants to hold on to compared to what we've thought in terms of guys out, guys in. And so that's really interesting to me. You know, like him and Park are obviously aligned, at least from the interview level, because he blew the rest of the candidates out of the water in terms of the interview process. So, you know, how can he build it out in both his and Porig's vision? And can he get the most out of guys like Cole? Can he get the most, you know, can a guy like Hanya or Ollie or someone that was so dominant at R2 come up and be an impact guy? Can Yappy start scoring some goals? You know, can he put him in position? Can he get the best out of Rafa? Can he fix Cabral? I mean, there's so many factors into him being a successful coach or not. Then I'm not going to write it off completely, especially, you know, coming under, you know, United was not at its peak when he was there with Ralph Ragnick, you know, going from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and then an interim and then Ragnick getting fired. But Ragnick is a great development coach. You know, he might not have been the guy to run one of the biggest clubs in the world, but he's definitely a good development guy. So learning under him is at least encouraging, you know, like a little bit. So I still think it's a playoff. It'll be playoffs. I'm not predicting a home playoff game. I'm not predicting, you know, I'm talking like 6th or 7th.
So you brought up a lot of players that I think are going to be big parts of the Rapids core next year, like Ollie, Yappy. I think they're going to get a bigger run because you said Armas is more of a development coach. He learned under Ragnick. Which player that's right now on the Rapids you think benefits the most from the new hire? Somebody like Chris Armas that can come here and develop a team.
I mean, you hope it's Cole, right? Like that's who you want to see take that next level, right? And that's kind of who you can. I mean, based on your DP slots being full and, you know, like who went out and who could or could not come in, you hope that it's Cole. You know, career high in goals. He just had a nice assist in an Olympic qualifier for the national team over the weekend. You hope it's him. You know, maybe a guy like, maybe he's the guy that unlocks Cabral, right? Like we talked to a lot of people, not just Rapids people, but national people, and no one has sold their Cabral stock except for Rapids fans, which is fine. Can't blame you. Wouldn't blame you at all.
I mean, Galaxy fans are kind of up there.
Galaxy fans too, sure, fair enough. But, you know, and I won't blame you for that. Go ahead and sell it. I think, you know, we might be crazy for grasping on to the last bit of Cabral stock, but maybe he's the guy that breaks him out. You know, I think Cole is the guy. Yappy's on that list. Maybe Hanya, if he can get that first team contract, because I really think he has a future as a MLS guy. Yeah, those would probably be my guys. What about you? Like who's on your list for like needs to be developed?
Duane?
Here's my hot take. The player that benefits the most under Armas, bringing in more of a pressing versus the usual Rapids way. And he probably won't be on the roster, but he's on the roster right now, so I'm including him, is Jonathan Lewis.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say that. As soon as you said not on the roster.
He's
not gonna play 1 second in a Rapids game.
The question was which player on the current roster would benefit most from a Chris Armas.
Okay,
coaching.
Well now the question is, besides Jonathan Lewis, no,
it will be in that answering that question would be Jonathan Lewis. If they bring in a Red Bull high press style, someone like Jonathan Lewis would benefit quite a bit under that high press versus what we've been doing under the past couple of coaches. Do I think he's still going to be here? Probably not. But to answer the question as it stands right now, it's J-Lu. I agree with you on Cole and all the young guys too. I'm just answering the question. If it started today and this is the roster, it's J-Lu.
Hey, who knows? Maybe we might not think he is. We've heard rumors that he might not be here. Maybe he looks at Jonathan Lewis. Armas looks at Jonathan Lewis like, that's my guy. That's my new 9 up there. That's my 10.
I think those rumors are directly from Jonathan Lewis. Like, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, again, I agree with you. I'm pretty sure Jonathan Lewis is like.
I don't think those are like.
I think J-Lu's like, honestly, hey, man, I want to play, and he's not playing.
When you talk about that high press, in terms of players covering ground and maintaining, a high work rate, you really hope that he is the guy that can unlock Rafa, because he covers ground, at an exceptional rate in terms of his work rate and making himself available and working the press. You really hope that it's Rafa. Stylistically, right? Like, stylistically, you hope that guy you put up top is willing to run the press and then turn and run with the ball. So
yeah, Rafa and Cole fit that the hardest. I mean, those two dudes cover so many miles in one match. Yes. It's insane.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I've been rewatching a lot of these Rapids games. I've been going back and just kind of watching what's going. I mean, I signed up for this. Nobody did. Happy Thanksgiving to Dustin, who has to run right now. But I've been watching a bunch of them. And man, Rafa's so sweet with it. Rafa has that touch. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to score. He doesn't have the finishing touch, but he does have that touch, man. He has that thing where if he wants to make the run towards the box and take on 2-3 guys, he definitely can do it. We just need to see that more from him, honestly. Like, you're right. Both of you are right. I think Rafa's going to be the guy that gets the most under Armas. And that's what I'm hoping for, because I want to pay that $4.5 million for him, because that means it's worth it. That means that he did something great, and he's going to be a Rapid, and he's going to be a Rapid legend, and we're going to be all in on him, right? Like, if you pay that much money, it means that you're expecting great things from that guy.
So they spent about the same amount on Giacomakis in Atlanta, right? Mm-hmm. And he came in. I think he only played. He played less than 30 matches. I think he played 26. I want to say 26 matches for the Greek striker, and he put in 10 goals. He was newcomer of the year. I think you kind of look at the end of season there with how poorly it went with Frazier at the end and kind of all that, and say, hey, like, we saw some intangibles. We saw you make yourself available to guys, in transition and really work well with guys like Gutman and Harris, and we liked what we saw there. But now we need to see, before that deadline, we probably need to see somewhere between like 8 to 10 goal contributions before you pull that trigger.
I think it has to be a little bit more than that. I might have to be 15 goal contributions, maybe like 10 goals and 5 assists before then.
10 goals and 5 assists before the summer window is that's asking a lot. That's good. That's like on pace to be MLS MVP.
Yeah, but again, you're paying that kind of money.
Like, I don't know. Like, the price isn't the same as it used to be, right? Like, Giacomakis is not going to be MLS MVP, but this is what he costs, because that's now the cost of business in the MLS. It's a world market now, right? They're spending more than they ever did to get players that aren't as good as those previous crazy spends are, right? So you hope if you can get 5 goals, 3 assists by that break, something like that, I think it's worth it.
But the thing with that is, you basically wasted half a year with him. If you would have got half a year and then next year with 15 contributions, I would have been like perfect. But you kind of wasted half a year and didn't do much except for a goal. And now you kind of have to make up for it in that 6 months.
Mrs. League's Cup with the document processing through Brazil. I think there was some damage there, and I can't blame anyone for not performing well in the environment that he walked into at its absolute lowest. Like, it doesn't get lower than the team he walked into. I can't imagine trying to base all your decisions on performing in what was just a not healthy place to go to work. Like, just was like, people weren't into it.
I completely agree, but I'm also just looking at Cole and the turnaround he had. And I'm like, if Cole can do it, you should be able to do it. And I don't, again, he 3 goals in 5 games or 3 goals in 6 games, however games he played in the end of the year, I would have been all down for. And I think like, okay, cool. that's fine. But 1 goal in like I think it was 8 games, right?
Yeah, I mean that's not great. You also look at no Max on the roster, no other Brazilians or Portuguese speakers in general. Sydney does come in, so that helps there. But there's a language barrier. In
Rubio's gone,
practice,
which
you're
was kind
basically
of his
relying on
buddy.
you're basically relying on the translator to like, tell you what's going on in practice, right?
Yeah.
Like, so that takes a while before you can fully, integrate communications and stuff. But if this turned into a Rafa pod all of a sudden, but if he's the guy that unlocks him, a sign of progress for Armas, a sign of it's working and he'll be around is if Rafa is good enough to pick up that option. I think that is a benchmark halfway through the season that if Rafa has shown that he's worth by far the most expensive transfer in Rapids history, then Armas is on the right track.
All right. 2 quick questions before I let you go, or maybe 1.
Sure.
What's the thing that you're most grateful for this Thanksgiving? Second one, what's your favorite DNVR shirt?
Okay. Most thankful for this Thanksgiving. Well, I mean, I've posted about it on the internet before, but, my dad had a run-in with cancer this year. He had a big surgery to get it removed. He had some post-op complications, some side effects that are rare, and it was in the hospital for almost 2 months. He got out yesterday. He will be here at our house for Thanksgiving. My sister came out from Western Slope with the fam, so we'll be all together celebrating, thankful as a family, which is pretty cool. So that's definitely tops of that list.
Yeah, man. That's awesome, dude. We were really happy to hear that when that happened, man. We're so happy for you and your family.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Before I do my shirts, what about you guys? What are you guys most thankful for?
I'm thankful for to be part of the Pitts community, honestly. Be a Pitts people. I'm really grateful that I get to work with a lot of great people in the soccer world. I get to work in sports. I'm grateful for my job, and I'm grateful for my family. Like, I love that I have such a great family, and all you guys listening and everybody at home and everybody at work has become a part of it. And it's been awesome to be a part of all that.
Yeah, family for sure. I'll keep it PIDS related since we're talking PIDS show. Thankfulness in the PIDS community. It's really the folks that we get to meet and interact with because of the show. And for me, I mean, not just like in the chat and on Twitter, but, at the matches, at the C38 tailgate. It's been last season was a crummy year for soccer, but it was a great year for the community kind of coming together, both good and bad. I feel like the voice was heard. Again, it's both good and bad. But the fact that there is a voice and you feel like the Rapids community is there fighting for the club and fighting against the club, that's a really good thing in a time of, challenge and questions and all of those things. No one seems to have skipped out, whether or not you renewed your tickets or whatever. It's not a financial thing. It's are you still in? Last week, everybody was in the chats, mostly upset about the hire. And I think that's a good thing, just to
100%.
jump in and we can all like get through it as a group of fans and supporters. And I don't know, man, I'm thankful to have a club that's, has a supporters group that are that vocal and interested in the club, even though it's not easy right now.
It's about as hard as it's ever been.
Really is pretty hard right now. I mean, we're not Chicago or Portland, so
No, I think Chicago's
there are
not
worse.
as bad. We're still worse in Chicago.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think Chicago's pretty bad.
Okay.
But anyway,
Favorite DNVR shirt? You two go first.
No, you go first.
No, you go first.
Oh, are we gonna do this? My favorite one is the Pitts one. I love the Pitts one, but if I'm being honest, the Four Horsemen is kind of slaps.
Wow, that's
yes,
a cool one,
dude. That was when I was merch manager that came out, and I was like, oh my god, that thing it's still one of my favorite ones.
The Four Norrismen.
The Four Norsemen. How about you?
It's
Duane?
rad as hell.
Yeah, mine's just the black DNVR hoodie. I'm not wearing it today, but that is like
Really
the most comfy hoodie on the face of the planet, just with the little flag on the chest. T-shirt wise, it's Maxi, Sombor Maxi.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. 'Cause
Fantastic.
Maxi's hilarious.
I definitely love our scarf. Up the pids always. No doubt there.
Get pitted.
But my favorite has got to be, I'm a big Nuggets guy. Getting that Nug Life shirt with the Larry O'Brien as the eye. Doesn't get better than that. It's perfect.
I never thought that Larry O'Brien would have the Pixar treatment where he just like knocks out the eye, which is kind of insane.
It's perfect. That yeah, that's got. I like the new PS2 shirt too. Although it's not. I don't know if I can pull it off, but I like it.
Yeah, that's definitely a swag thing that you have to be like a certain cool factor for that one.
I'm not. Cool
Yeah, that's not this
shirt.
podcast.
Yeah, not for sure. For sure, that's 100%. All right, Mitch. Thank you very much, man. We'll let you get back to all your hard work that we're gonna teach here in a minute. We appreciate you very much. Have a good Thanksgiving and up the pits for the Mitch.
Up the pids, baby. I'll catch you guys.
All right,
See you,
man.
Mitch.
Appreciate you, man. Oh, giving her a second. What's going on? I'm confused. All right.
Turned off echo,
Super producer Alyssa doing all the hard work behind the scenes. The reason we ask about your favorite shirt is because we have a Black Friday sale at DNVR where there's some shirts that are 90% off.
Huge.
All your Christmas shopping at DNVR. Why not? We got super producer Alyssa who's going to buy her whole family the whole locker. So you better be quick because it might be out by then. But it's a hell of a deal. We do this every year. It's a big day for us. We kind of lose money on this, but we got to clear inventory as well. And so we're passing on the savings to you. Like, man, I've always wanted to say that when I was a kid. But again, you should really check it out. It's such a great deal. DNVR in ALLCITY is always trying to hook people up. If you're a fan of a different team in our network, we also have a sale going on in those lockers.
Yep.
Go check it out. We're going to drop so much cool shit here coming up. And you should get some of these things might not even be in stock anymore after Black Friday. So really, really take advantage of everything going on. That's the best thing I have to say about this, honestly. Black Friday is so dope, man. And that's why Mitch is on the show today, because Mitch is grinding. You make him work, dude. He's going to work so hard these next couple of weeks. He's a little stressed.
2 weeks after the sale are going to be a bummer for Mitch.
He's going to, but man.
So much stuff to ship.
If you love Mitch, you will buy something, though. He loves to do that. Like, he loves when he sees those numbers comes in. Like, as a merch manager, I remember seeing just 400, 500 sales, and I'm like, man, this is incredible. I love this so much. But truly, go check out our sale. It's going to be amazing. Almost everything's going to be on sale, 90% off.
Yep.
All right. So we kind of got Mitchell's expectations for the season. I want to get yours, Duane. We got a brand new head coach, Mr. Chris Armas himself, Mr. Positive and Love, that I kind of love. Like, what do you think?
He's a player's guy.
Yeah,
Sure.
he's a player's. He's a guy's guy, it feels like. He feels, again, don't mean this with any insult like Man U. I kind of told Duane, I'm like, he's kind of like Ted Lasso in the positive aspect of it. He's the guy that's looking at the positive and always trying to make things work correctly. And that's something I can really get behind. That's the one thing I can really get behind. Maybe not his record, but the person itself. And I want to know, what do you expect from Chris Armas in his first year, and what should the expectation be for him?
So I've been, like most of us, I've been thinking a lot about this hire over the last week. I'm probably not as fiery in my takes as most folks have been on Twitter. And that's honestly because there's nothing we can do about it. Like, the decision has been made. And so Chris Armas is the head coach of the Rapids. So, I'm kind of been taking the week to think about what that might mean. Where the past has brought him to here. Is all of the Rapids Twitter anger focused on the right place? and I go back to thinking about these candidates, and we look at the finalists that we knew about. And Robin Fraser is a more qualified coach than all of those finalists. But everybody was calling for Robin Fraser's head. So Robin's gone. And then we get a group of finalists that are, in my opinion, my humble opinion, not at Robin Fraser's level. So I'm not going to hold that against, I'm not going to hold it against Armas for applying for the job. Okay. These are all guys. The finalists were all guys with little to no head coaching experience in the MLS.
Yeah. I think he might have been the most experienced, right?
He was the most experienced out of all of them. It's a matter of all of these guys shooting their shot to get a head coaching position in the MLS. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to hold that against Armas. Do I like his record coming into it? Do I like his background coming into it? Was I excited about, him being announced as the head coach? No. But again, the dude's taking his shot to get a head coaching job, and I'm not going to be angry at him personally for doing that.
Yep.
If I want a job, I go for it. Whether or not I get it or not, that's not up to me. And I think that's what it gets down to is like, this is a front office decision. It's not a Chris Armas decision, other than he took his shot just like Chris Little, and everybody else who went for it.
I mean, it's kind of like dating, right? Like,
yeah,
you sometimes you just got to take your shot. You might be out of your league, but you take your shot and you never know. You might end up with a hot girl at the end of the night.
Yeah, and you don't know.
I mean the Rapids might not be the hot girl, but like, you know what I mean.
But that's one of the other points too is, again, the finalists who came in for this, and B-Ray is saying that it's not true on Fraser.
He's overrated.
It doesn't matter how you look at it. Robin Fraser is 100% more qualified than all of these candidates, both from a resume perspective, from an experience perspective, from a success perspective. That's inarguable. When you look at the facts, you can't argue. I mean, you can argue it, but you're not going to be right.
Greatest regular season in Rapids history.
Yeah, it's looking at, did he have a real bad last season? Of course he did. But again, still the level is not comparable. So you have to look at this group that came in as finalists. You didn't hear top tier names coming in, and there's a reason for that. And, this is a club that had a really bad, yes, his time in Chivas and Pids was not great. He also had one of the best seasons of Pids. He's won championships as an assistant coach, all things that the other guys in this group hasn't done. So I'm going to stick with my take on that. And so B-Ray, for those of you not watching that are listening,
correct? We haven't yet, at least.
No, I don't. I think it was probably your guy.
Juarez?
Yeah,
Juarez.
I think that it was your guy.
I'm hoping.
Anyway, but you're looking at coming into a squad that was not good. Not even mid, just not good. Second to last in the whole league. You're two, and I still love you too, Bray. And so, you're looking at, regardless of which one of these guys would have got the job, they're coming into a team that was not good. They're coming into a team where there's no identity right now, and there's two players that were the heart of this team and really solidified the identity of the team, and they're both gone now, and Diego Rubio and Jack Price. There is so much to not be excited about. If this was your new job and everything was this at this level, at whatever industry you're in, that is a bummer. And so that's one reason why I think another hot take that I have about Armas is I actually think he's going to have a longer leash than most people think.
Oh, definitely.
Because really I don't want to say there's nowhere to go but up, because technically we're second to last. So there is that last spot. But for all intents and purposes, there's nowhere to go but up. And
Well, in the West, they were last.
yeah. And so I think that leash is going to be longer than most people expect it to be or want it to be. I think we want it to be a short leash based on what we've seen from Armas in the past, but I actually think it's going to be a little bit longer for him to have some say in the roster construction and what we bring out. But again, I'm not expecting to like run the league and end up with a home game in the playoffs, regardless of who would have got the coaching job, because without some like real roster changes, some small changes in tactics are not going to do a ton of work. We saw Chris Little come in and make a couple of tactical changes, but Chris Little didn't run, full wins throughout. He had a pretty much 500.
Yeah, it was like 2. One, it was like 1, 2 something, like or 2, 1.
It was
like
basically
that.
500. It was. There were some tactical changes that were made. Guys were happier. Cole was scoring goals, and it was still about 500.
I mean, but that's better than being below 500. 500 might have gotten you into the playoffs,
right, but
honestly.
what I'm saying, yeah, exactly. But again, like it didn't make massive finish out on only wins for the rest of the season, So it's like those changes are only going to do so much without this roster being at a higher level. So I guess what I'm saying in this is that I don't know what my expectations are for Chris Armas. I guess I come in with pretty low expectations based on, what the past tells us. And knowing that the roster is a massive challenge for anybody coming in to coach this team. This is a club known to not spend money. We got Rafa in here and it's $4.5 million. But he scored 1 goal so far. And now, like we talked about earlier with Mitch, he's going to get about 6 months. And I'm with you on that. Like, I better see a big number of goal contributions.
He wasted 8 games. You have to.
You got to see big goal contributions coming from him, or I just can't sign that check, from me. Not that I sign him, but, for me as a fan,
you don't want him on
I'm
the
not
squad.
sure I want to spend that much money on a guy unless he's putting up real big goal contributions. So anyway, that's kind of what I've been thinking over the week is, at first, I was really pissed off at Chris Armas for getting the job. And I'm like, wait a minute, why am I pissed off at this guy?
No, he did nothing wrong.
He's just trying to get a job.
Of course.
And so it's like, I'm kind of transitioning my thing as if this doesn't work, I'm not going to be super angry at Chris Armas. Like, certainly some of it is going to be his responsibility. It is his job and his responsibility to do a good job and take this team to a higher level. But some of that has to go to the decision makers that chose him as well.
So kind of looking at it then, you're not thinking no playoffs doesn't mean it's a bust. It's, hey, man, sometimes it's not on Chris. And I get that. I
it
understand
depends
that.
on playoffs. It depends on who we bring in.
Again,
right?
and it all depends. Looking at the roster, like right now, because again, this is all with caveats, how Mitch said, and it's way too early expectations. And I understand that, but we do have to talk about it a little bit because we do have to set an expectation for a coach, for a team that was so bad last year. And to me, expectations are playoffs. They should be playoffs day in and day out. They should be, hey, I want to win. Whether you reach them, whether you're ready for them, whether you have the talent on your squad to actually get there, it's very different. And I completely understand. But at the end of the day, expectations, in my opinion, do have to be playoffs. They have to be like, you have to be in the dance. You have to get ready. Mitch made a great point. More than half the league makes the playoffs. How are you not in there? How do you not make a run at it? And at that point, it is super frustration, and I'm super pissed at the front office, at the ownership, at everything around it. And it's because they didn't give Armas enough. If they give Armas everything in his power and he doesn't make it, that's where I'm frustrated with the coaching hire.
On him. Yeah.
But then it also falls back on ownership and front office for making that hire.
For sure.
So at the end of the day, it really does feel like the front office has only one thing that they can do, and that's win. All they can do is win to win this fan base and reach expectations. Anything besides that, it's going to be a total disaster, and it's not going to be deserving because it is, you made the coaching hire. Cool. You're making the roster decisions. Cool. So at the end of the day, if neither of those work and you don't even make the 10th place playoff spot, it's a complete utter fail. Because what you're saying is that Chris Little, who got you close to 500 with a 2.33 record, thank you, B-Ray, was not good enough for this. With the lackluster roster, he got you almost to 500, and you're not good enough. We expect more. So you should be expecting playoffs then, because if 500 can almost get you the 10th spot of the playoffs, then you should be expecting at least close to a home playoff game with Chris Armas, because that's what Chris Little was going to get you at least into the playoffs with the record he had last year.
So I'll throw this question out, and this question is kind of a tweaked question from Holding the Highline question. From talking about Armas, is that what if the roster? So we're getting into roster time. I think it's mid-December when the window opens and moves can start being made. What if the Rapids do what the Rapids do, and they don't really bring in much to help this roster out, and so the entire season is run with what we have now, but they bring up Iosuke Hanya, they bring up Ali Laraz, maybe Remy, whoever, but the kids are playing, and so the entire season is run. Basically, your veterans are Gutman, a young Connor Ronan, Keegan Rosenberry,
Cole Bassett, technically, because he's like the most experienced out of that midfield at that point in the MLS.
And and Beta, if he's back, like that's your veterans, and two of them are very young, but the kids play. And we run through the entire season with the youngest roster out there, and we miss the playoffs by a point. Is that on Chris Armas for not getting us over the hump, or is that, hey, he got us within 1 point with the arguably youngest and least experienced roster in the league?
I'm going to answer that question after this quick ad break from Illegal Pete's. We are brought to you by Illegal Pete's, where you can get beer, buddies, and burritos. One of the best places to go hang out. The patio might be a little too cold nowadays, but the margs are still great. You're still going to love their margaritas. You're still going to love being out there. And right now, if you take a ticket to any game, Broncos, Nuggets, Avs, EU, any game, they'll give you a free margarita right before the game. So Illegal Pete's is one of the greatest places to go have a nice burrito. It's way better than any competitor that claims to be from Colorado and then left. Looking at you, big chain restaurant. Illegal Pete's is dope, man. Go eat there. I'm not Mitch, so I don't got any tips. And if you want a tip, it's go to Illegal Pete's. It's a great place. It's a great time. It's always one of my favorite places to eat.
Yeah, your tip is just to bring your ticket from any game.
Of course, and it's
Get
also
a
their
free
promo.
margarita or draft beer.
My tip is save money and take that ticket. Like that's it. Like I'm not giving you an Illegal Pete's tip. I'm giving you a life tip. Take every deal possible. But kind of going back to that, if they do miss the playoffs by 1 point with the super young roster, it gives you hope. I have hope, but still not good enough. And I'm going to stick to this.
So is that you cut Chris Armas?
No, you don't. You
give him another year?
You don't. At that point, I'm sad. I really am. Because things on the trending on the right way, it feels stagnant. It feels like you're just back to regular Pitt's life. There's not going to be any major changes because, hey, we made improvement, but yet we're not still good enough. I'm afraid that when they are good enough, they're going to sell all their assets and not replace them again. Kind of like what happened in 2021. And it's not going to feel good. It's in my opinion, I might be happy in the moment, but looking at big picture, which is what I'm looking at, because I don't want the Rapids to be a little ho-town team. I don't want it to be the laughing stock of the MLS, which it feels like they are a lot of the time. And I'll get to that in a minute with some quotes I have from national media. But that wouldn't be good enough for me. I need playoffs. We have gone through 2 years without playoffs, and that's not acceptable, and it shouldn't be acceptable. As a team, as a fan base, we should be asking for more. And I'm sure inside of that roster, inside that locker room, inside that front office, they're doing the same thing. They're asking for more. They want more. They're saying, hey, we need to make the playoffs. But talk is cheap, and we need to make it. We need to get to the place where playoffs is not just an expectation, where playoffs is not a hope, it's an expectation, and we need to make it into the place where the Rapids are not just in the playoffs, they're contenders. Because I'm tired of this. Every 4 or 5 years, they make a good run, and hopefully they can go in deep. You have the 2016 Tim Howard era, which was a great year. You have the 2021 Jack Price, Diego Rubio era, which was fun. You have the 2010 MLS Cup. But I'm tired of this 5-year run. I'm tired of this, like, let's see what happens. Let's see if we can do it. Like, oh, like, where are the spunky underdogs? I don't want to be the spunky underdogs anymore. I want to be a well-run organization that year in and year out is in the mix. It's being talked about, one of the best squads in the MLS. Maybe they're dropping down a little bit. They're, like, fluctuating between 3 to 5, and I'm 3 to 6, and I'm happy. That's what I want. I don't want to be
the Rockies.
Yeah, I don't want to be the Rockies. I don't want to be at the bottom of the pack
Colorado
anymore.
already has the Rockies.
I'm completely tired of this. I love the squad, and it hurts me every time I see them lose. Like, it's not fun. I hate it. Like, I'm pissed off. And I know I'm going to get texts later on, but it's fine. I don't care. Like, it is what it is. Like, I'm only telling the truth. And if I'm telling you I'm not giving them credit, I am, and you can go back. I'm one of the most positive people on this team and on this roster build for a long time. But when you keep getting the same results and keep doing the same thing, it's not okay, whether you develop young kids or not. Because at the end of the day, playoffs is the only thing that matters. Winning is the only thing that matters. And if you want to develop kids, that's fine. You had last year, the last half of the year, and you still didn't do it. So why? What's the point? I don't get it.
So let me ask you this question. You are a playoffs or bust mentality, which I think is pretty on par with everything that we've heard in the chat, both this week and last week, and also on Twitter. When we put that question out, what is it going to take to get to the playoffs, in your opinion? We have a coach now. What is it going to take? A coach largely coming in with a philosophy, or at least experience, that is the opposite of how the Rapids play soccer. So between roster moves, like what is it going to take to get you to there?
It's going to take a whole overhaul from top to finish. It's going to take commitment, which sometimes I feel like this team lacks a little bit, if I'm honest with you. It's going to take the front office going in there and bringing in a bunch of players and being like, this is what you're working with. We're getting you high-end players. That's the only way you're going to make the playoffs, because the playoffs are competitive. Whether you like the MLS or not, you can go look at the playoffs right now and you can see every team is so good. And the Rapids are not at that level.
Nope.
They're just not. You need to bring in the right guys. I don't expect you to spend a bunch of money, but you got to bring in the right guys. You got to play those guys, and you got to make sure they're developed into your system.
So what does the right guy look like?
The right
doesn't
guy
have to be positioned. Tell me about the guy.
The right guy is whatever Chris Armas wants. And I'm tired of this whole thing where it feels like Porig is looking at the players and being like, this is who you think it should be. No, you got to bring in bring the Armas guys. Let's see what Armas can cook. I'm going to trust Armas. I'm going to tell him, hey, dude, here's what you got to do. Cook. If you don't cook, it's because you didn't do the right thing. And that's going to be, and I'm going to lay it all on Armas's lap and be like, this is what you want. You want this guy? Here's your guy. Now cook. Make me a 5-course meal. Make me into one of the Michelin star restaurant. What do you want? That's what you need. You need to trust your coach. You need to give him all the power. You need to empower your coach. The Rapids bring up Philly so much. Philly trusts Jim Curtin. They give what Curtin wants. Curtin says, I want this guy. Let him cook. You look at Cincy, same thing out there, man. They're like, you want this? What you guys want? Fine. You want Lucho Costa? Here you go. You gotta trust your coach. I'm not saying Porig shouldn't have any any input on this, but I'm saying Armas should be the guy that's telling you, I need this type of player, and this guy fits my profile that I need. Bring him in, please. It shouldn't, and I don't need names. I need Armas to tell me, hey, who do you want? And it might be working that way, but it hasn't felt like that in the last few years. And kind of talking about the Armas hire and the national perspective of it and how people look at this Armas hire and the Rapids in general. I was listening to Morning Footy with Jaleel Alinaba and Alexis Guerrero's, Nico Cantor, and Susanna Collins. And I took a quote for each one of them when they reacted to this coaching hire. And it's not pretty.
Yeah.
And it's not pretty for the reasons that you think. It's not because they're roasting the Rapids for hiring Armas. They're roasting the Rapids. They're roasting Armas for going to the Rapids. Jaleel Alinaba did say, the issues with Colorado have been organizational. The organization has been poor. I want to know if he'll be set up for success. And that's what I'm talking about. It feels like there's a disconnect there and there's not a lot of commitment. And it might not just be front office. It might be ownership where that commitment's not coming from, which doesn't give the front office the right mentality to keep going. We get Alexis Guerrero's. I think he's putting himself in a difficult position in Colorado here. I can't imagine what they're going to do. That's not talking about Armas and how, that's talking about what Colorado's issues are. You can go to Nico Cantor. This is the one that hurt the most, in my opinion. Well, the next two hurt the most, in my opinion. Nico Cantor. I think he's above this job with all due respect to Colorado. I think if you go to Manchester United, you can get a much better job. That's not resounding confidence in the organization.
Yeah.
And then Susanna Collins, who did the MLS Now podcast, was great on there. Love her in Morning Footy. Says, I'm wondering if he can be the type of coach for the Colorado Rapids, almost despite the ownership in the front office situation. Does that sound like they're roasting Armas?
No. The funny, hey, we got on extra time. By we, I mean the Rapids. Everyone's always yelling that the Rapids are never on extra time. 5 minutes at the end of the show.
Let's go.
Last week they talked about the Chris Armas hire, and it was very similar. It was just a quick few statements, but the statements, a lot of it was he's not set up to succeed. So you have a guy that everybody is questionable about anyway. None of us have a ton of confidence in Chris Armas based on what he's done so far. You take that and then you add that to, not very many coaches, regardless of how good they are, would succeed in this current situation with an ownership that is known, that has a history of not spending, with a front office that prides itself on reclamation projects,
has a hit and miss record.
It has a 50-50 record. You could look at this coaching hire and say it's maybe the most Rapids coaching hire ever, in that it's pretty much a reclamation project,
That's true.
It fits right in there with the Rapids front office.
Players hate it, but it is the land of misfit toys.
Yes, it is. And so nothing good is coming, out of this from a quote standpoint. There's some people that are not high on Chris Armas as the hire. There are people that are not high on it, not because of Chris Armas, but because it doesn't matter who it is. They're going to struggle either way. It is a dangerous job for Chris Armas to take, because I don't believe he's set up for success, and that maybe that changes in the window. But that really is, and we mentioned it last week. He's not going to get a lot of head coach opportunities if this goes badly. That will be pretty much it for him. It will be a life of assistant coaching, which he does great at. It's hard, B-Ray is in the comments. He's saying, I don't want to read it because I haven't even read it yet. I just saw it's an opposite take. So let's share it. B-Ray says, I have the opposite take. I think Fraser really was the big issue, not playing the players correctly. We have the talent. I think we can be much better than the record from last year. I agree with some of that. I think we all know Fraser is a very stubborn guy. in the sense that he will run out one formation and he will beat it to death, regardless if we have the right guys for it or not. And he typically has his guys, and those are the guys that play. I don't think that we have super high talent. That's the only thing that I will challenge a little bit, in the sense of, if you look at our roster, how many people on our roster would be starters on other MLS teams that are in the playoffs?
Not many.
And not many. Maybe Gutman, maybe Ronan.
Ronan, I think Bombi and actually have all a shot. Keegan, I think, has a shot on some of these teams. I think Cole has a shot. I think there's plenty
There's
of
a shot though, but not definite.
Exactly.
You know, like what I'm saying, like, is like, how many of these players are definite starters on playoff caliber MLS teams?
2 to 3.
And I think,
at most.
and I think it's maybe 2, maybe 3.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, man, it's like, I know what you're saying, B-Ray. Like, I agree with you that, like, Frazier, I think at the end kind of lost the plot a little bit, and it's completely true. But it's also, you don't have enough talent. If you did, Chris Little would have a better record at the end. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, I look at Houston. I was not very high on Houston this year. I really was. I thought they were going to be one of the worst teams. Go look at the standings. I was completely wrong on my MLS playoff Western Conference standings, but didn't believe them. Good coaching hires elevate good teams, even if they don't have a lot of talent. They brought in 2-3 good players. Without Ben Olsen, you don't get a Coco being one of the elite players in the league and being looked at by Europe. You don't get Hector Herrera being the guy out there in Houston without Ben Olsen, because Hector Herrera did not have a good year last year. He really committed. You need guys to commit, but the coach is the ones that are going to make you commit. And at the end of the day, that's what the Rapids needed. And it feels like it might not happen as quickly as we expected, but it is possible to switch around a whole team in a year.
The thing about the Ben Olsen thing is really curious, because I think coming into the season, a Ben Olsen hire was not exciting for a lot of the same reasons that Chris Armas is not exciting. Like, what he brought to the table was not inspiring at all, coming from some very failed seasons. And it took, Houston half the season to start getting that right. Now, you mentioned it. The biggest thing about Ben Olsen is that they also brought in some key signings, some key players, and that made the difference. It wasn't all Olsen on that, but the encouraging thing is, I mean, since we're just in La La Land here comparing teams for no reason, is that that was probably not a popular hire. And when you look at what he brought, and what he brought was a lot of not success. So, there was something in his experience that he figured out, and was able to put that into play in Houston. And he also had a front office that was supporting him with some key players coming in too. So, I mean, that makes obviously all the difference. So, I mean, I don't know if that gives you any sense of hope at all that, if we could pull in a couple of key signings and have a Houston type year where it's a little rough at the beginning, but about midway through start to really click and then push hard and get that playoff berth, that would be amazing. I would be overjoyed with that.
I mean, at the end of the day, we'll see. I think it's playoff or bust, because that should be the expectation every year regardless, because in soccer you can build a team to be playoff the next year.
Sure.
If you do the right things, it's not a huge hill to climb, and I completely believe that with all my heart. But this will wrap it up for today, guys. We really appreciate you. We appreciate everybody tuning in on a Thanksgiving Eve morning. Some of us are a little hungover looking at you, producer list, after Friendsgiving last night. But we really, really appreciate everybody tuning in. We love doing this. It's one of the funnest parts of our jobs. We work really hard on so many things, and this is the one place that we can really express our feelings about everything. So thank you very much. Any final words, Duane?
Have a great Thanksgiving. Those of you that can spend time with your family, man, that's awesome. I hope you have a great time with your family. And those of you that can't, none of my family lives out here before I was married. And so Thanksgiving was very much a hangout with friends. That's the cool thing about Denver and about Colorado is everybody moves here. So people, if you got friends who don't have family out here, invite them over and have some good time with friends and also family. But yeah, have a great holiday, however you choose to enjoy that. But we hope you had some good time.
More importantly than all, how
What
we
could it
end
be?
every show.
What could it be?
It's up the pids.
We all silly like the mayor.